Hello everyone, it's Miss Peacock again and welcome back to our 4 mark scheme of work. Today's lesson is all going to be about costume design and how to answer a 4 mark question on costume. So before we begin to look at how to answer a 4 mark costume design question, your first task is going to be a research task. Now there's a table here of the different characters and when they are seen in the play. So I would like you to research clothes that Mickey and Linda would wear as working class children in the 1960s. You can do this through like a PowerPoint presentation, but it's just really important that you get lots of images so you've got a really good understanding of how these characters would look. I want you to look and research into how Eddie would look as a middle class child in the 1960s. The play obviously then jumps to them being teenagers. So again, I'd like you to research how teenagers such as Linda and Mickey would look as students in a secondary modern school in the 1970s, and then how Edward, a middle class young man, would look as a teen in the 1970s, remembering he went to a private boarding school. We're then going to move on to the characters being adults. So I want you to look at how Mickey, Linda and Eddie would be as adults in the 1980s, thinking about the difference between Mickey as a working class unemployed person compared to Eddie as a middle class council worker. Now, Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Lyons's outfits do not change a lot throughout the play, but just think about how Mrs. Johnson, as a working class housewife and cleaner, would look in the 1960s to the 1980s, and how Mrs. Lyons would look as a middle class mother of the 1960s to 80s. If you have time, your extra challenge is to look at the narrator character and think about what he symbolises, okay? He is somebody who sort of is current throughout the whole play. He's there throughout everything. He could almost symbolise a devil-like character. He could symbolise somebody who can predict the future. So thinking about how he might dress. So that is your first task. So here is an example of a 4-mark question based on costume. So you are designing a costume for Edward to wear in a performance of this extract. The costume must reflect the context of Blood Brothers, set in a Liverpudlian community in the late 1960s. Describe your design idea for the costume. And the extract that relates to the question is the extract that is set in Mrs. Johnston's house, and it's a piece between Mrs. Johnston and Edward, where Mrs. Johnston gives Edward a locket. Here we've got examples of what you might want to include in your 4-mark question, and this comes from the exam board. So just have a little read now of some elements that you might want to include in a response to this 4-mark question. So here is an example of how you might want to answer this 4-mark question based on costume. Again, have a look at how this student has used the CIDDH structure. Edward is a middle-class 8-year-old who lives in 1960s Liverpool. My intention as a costume designer would be to show that his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lyons, have lots of money and they care for him. I would also want his costume to contrast with the other character in the scene, Mrs. Johnston, his real mother, but he does not know, as she is a working-class cleaner. He would wear black painted shoes that were polished. He would wear grey polyester shorts that had clearly been ironed. He would wear cream cotton plain socks that were pulled up to his knees. He would wear a clean white polo shirt with the button done all the way up to the top. Over this, he would wear a real woolen grey jumper that was tied around his neck, resting on his shoulders. His hair would be gelled with a side parting. These clothes would all look new and be wrinkle-free. This costume design would highlight to the audience the difference in class between Mrs. Johnston and Edward. And here we just have another example of how you might want to answer this 4-mark question. So I'll give you time to read that now. So on the next slide, we're just going to give you another example of a costume question that you might get in the exam. So this costume question relates to the extract that links to the final part in the play, the part where Mickey shoots Edward. I want you to find that section in the play now. So the question is, you are designing a costume for Mickey to wear in a performance of this extract. The costume must reflect the context of Blood Brothers set in a working class Liverpudlian community in the 1980s. Describe your design ideas for costume. So here on the right hand side are some examples of what you might want to include in this 4-mark response. So it's really important that you remember in your 4-mark responses that you must use keywords linking to each design element. So as this 4-mark question is on costume, it's really important that you learn the costume keywords and their definitions, and you must be able to use these in a sentence. So I'm going to give you time now. Your task is to learn these keywords and their definitions. So now you've learnt the key words that link to costume, it's time to use them in an example response. On the next 5 slides, there are 5 different example 4-mark questions, and I would like you to have a go at answering those questions. They all relate to a different extract from the play, and remember, you must use the CIDDH structure, key words, and you must spend 5 minutes on these questions. Good luck! Don't forget to read the top tips to help you with your answer.